Hello and welcome to The Big Fight. It's long been one of India's most sensitive states because of its location right next to China and there in the northeast. But at the same time, Arunachal Pradesh also been one of the most peaceful states in the northeast by far. And now it finds itself in the headlines because of a political storm over the imposition of President's rule, something which has now gone to the Supreme Court. Was there a complete breakdown of the constitutional machinery, as has been said by the governor, something which should not have been upheld by the president, and that's why President's rule has been imposed? Or is it, as the Congress party is being saying, some sort of a murder of democracy that has been done in that state? What does this mean specifically for Arunachal Pradesh? And also, what does it mean for that entire controversy that we've often had in the past about Article 356 in general, whether it should be used or not? So those are some of the issues we're going to be discussing right here on The Big Fight. And joining us in the program, we have Kiren Rijiju, Minister of State for Home Affairs. Jarpam Gamnan joining us, the founding editor and publisher of the Eastern Sentinel, is joining us from Itanagar. We have Mr. Soli Sarabji, former Attorney General of India, joining us to give us the best legal opinion on what exactly, where we stand on all of these issues. Shekar Gupta is joining us from Kolkata, right here in the studio. Sudhanshu Trivedi, spokesperson BJP, is with us, as is Dr. Ajay Kumar, spokesperson of the Congress party. And it's a great pleasure and a privilege to have with us Mr. A.R. Kohli, the former governor of Mizoram, also held additional charge in Meghalaya for a short period of time, but can give us his expert opinion. Mohan Guruswamy is with us, chairman of the Center for Policy Alternatives, and Dr. Gargo Chatterjee is with us, well-known commentator, who's going to be helping us to analyze everything that's happened. Mr. Sarabji, why don't I come to you for that legal opinion right up front, because the matter is now before the Supreme Court. So before we get into the politics of the whole thing, where do you think we legally, what do you think the legal position is on this?
The legal position has been laid down by the Supreme Court in its judgment in Bomaya's case. In short, the position is that the President's proclamation, imposition of President's rule, is justiciable. At one time the view was that the courts can't get into it. That view doesn't hold good at all. It's not a question of judicial hands-off. But at the same time, the court can't go into the correctness or adequacy of the material. What he has to see is whether the reasons given are relevant or extraneous. Now the question here is, that's a question of fact. If the Chief Minister, I say if, because I don't know, that has to be established in court, deliberately refused to call the session of the Assembly in order to avoid facing a flawed test, if that be so, then naturally he was not acting in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. And that would be a good ground for imposition of President's rule.
All right, sir. Let me just get Mr. Kohli in on this note. So you've been in that position. How do you interpret the position from the point of view of the governor and what he did? And was it correct? Should it have been done differently? What would you have done if you were in his position?
Governor has simple role to uphold the Constitution. He has to preserve, protect and defend it. The constitutional process should not break down. Now, that has to be ensured at the level of the Chief Minister, who is the head of executive, also by the Speaker, who is the head of the legislature. Unfortunately, here I find the Chief Minister and the Speaker are brothers, relatives. They joined hands. There was a split in the party. They did not want to call the House. The Governor should have asked the Chief Minister to recommend for summoning of Assembly. He should have waited for it. Unfortunately, Governor called a parallel Assembly, which is not desirable, because legislature, the Assembly is an institution. You cannot compromise that. That was a mistake done. He could have also imposed a President rule at that time also because of constitutional breakdown, if the Chief Minister did not call the Assembly. But he has to call the Assembly on the advice of the Chief Minister, which means the Chief Minister is not interested in that part. Subsequently, all the gherav of the Raj Bhavan and whatever has happened is again a shameful thing. You cannot
so that's why there's so many currents in this, the sacrifice of mitrons.
You cannot undermine any institution or any constitutional body in the eyes of the people.
You seem to be saying, and I think Mr. Sarabji is saying too, that it's a slightly unclear case because there were faults on both sides. Is that what you're saying?
The case is very clear. There was a problem. The problem should have been sorted out in a simple way. Give the notice to the Chief Minister to recommend for the Assembly being calling, and Speaker cannot preside when there is a no confidence motion against him. Somebody else has to preside. Supposing Chief Minister refuses it, in any case, after 17th of January, 6 months would have passed, which ultimately the Governor has taken the same stand. If there is no assembly called within 6 months, then it's a constitutional breakdown. So, I personally feel imposition of President rule was the right decision to be done earlier, of course, giving the notice to the Chief Minister.
Okay.
And even now it is also justified, because you cannot go into a sitting executive head cannot go out and encourage agitation in his own state, which is undesirable.
All right, let me come to the politics of this, and then I want to come to some of the broader aspects of this, because there are major implications in this. Implications for center-state relations, the implications for what is going to happen in the northeast, and is Arunachal Pradesh being destabilized in a sense, implications for, you know, what should the constitutional provisions be going forward. So I'm going to come to all of those, but first, the politics of what happened. And do you want to respond to what he was saying, that in a sense the Chief Minister and the Speaker were almost deliberately not allowing the process to be taken forward? So maybe the Governor had no choice.
No, I think one is that with due respect to what Mr. Kohli said, is there's a certain amount of misrepresentation of the facts. The fact is that on November 16th, the Governor actually signed on a notification calling for the assembly on January 14th. So the Governor signed it. It was a legal order. So the assembly was supposed to meet on the 14th of January. Thereupon, the Governor takes upon himself on December 9th to prepone it. So first question is, isn't that the government behaving like an agent? He signed it, the council minister recommends it, everything was going on. There wouldn't have been any of these crises or any so-called created crisis by the Bharatiya Janata Party to dismiss the government if they stuck to the January 14th issue. But what happened was, because it was his order, so it's the second part is then the Governor goes 2 steps ahead. He also decides on the session, which is the December 16th, that what will be in the Business Advisory Committee, which is in the domain of the Business Advisory Committee. It is not his domain. He decides that the Speaker's removal should be in it. So here is the Governor taking the role of the Council of Ministers, setting up the agenda, calling a assembly, and throwing everything to the wind.
We've got your point. Before I come to you, Sudhanshu, would you agree with him that the Governor should not have preponed the session?
Absolutely, I agree with that. If it was 14th January, he should have stuck to that. Now, some people say there will be horse trading. Whether donkey trading or horse trading is none of his business.
Okay.
That they can indulge. If people in the political world wants to be political animals, it's their privilege. That's all. And people are watching them.
Kiren Rijiju is joining us, Minister of State for Home Affairs, also from Arunachal Pradesh, so perhaps one of the best people to really try and get a handle on all that's happening. Kiranji, when you see what has happened out here, and I'm also going to be asking you for the possible impact or implication of how this entire crisis is being seen in Arunachal Pradesh. What is your take on this?
First of all, the entire episode which has been happening for last more than 1 month in Arunachal Pradesh is totally creation of the Congress party and Congress legislators. We have nothing to do with that. The accusation that the central government was quite hasty in terms of its recommendation for the presidential rule, this is totally wrong. If center was in haste, then it could have recommended the president rule on the first day when the governor recommended for invoking Article 356 on 17th of December last year. But center chose to wait because center believed that let the matter be settled within the assembly of Arunachal Pradesh and they should settle it down there itself. So central government waited for more than a month. Then subsequently when governor has finally recommended that constitutional machinery has completely broken down and there is no other options other than the invoking of 356. Then only the cabinet had recommended it to the Rashtrapati ji and which was duly given his assent.
Okay, but Mr.
Now,
Rijiju, I just wanted to ask you that if you look at the past, and you know, I hear what you're saying, and there might be times in Article 356 there's no choice but to call it in. But the reason why I think there's a certain amount of concern in general, any time when Article 356 is invoked or President's rule is invoked, is historically in the past, and I think the Congress party has probably misused it as much as any other, or perhaps more than any other party has. But in the past, there have been times when the imposition of President's rule have led to a backlash in those states, have caused a sense of alienation, have caused people to be uncomfortable with what's happened. which is why I'm asking you that how is this being seen in Arunachal Pradesh? Because Arunachal has been a very peaceful state, but yet a very sensitive state because of its location. So what has been the response to all of this in Arunachal Pradesh from your constituents?
First of all, Arunachal Pradesh is witnessing so much of chaos and mess. The people are welcoming it. But my point is, president rule is not the solution, and president rule is not the option also. It is an ultimate method when all other constitutional machineries in the democratic setup is totally collapsed. Then only center intervenes in this kind of situation. Now the real point is, in the national media or in the national circle, people are speaking about the pros and cons. But in Arunachal context, I am very sad that not many people know about what is happening there. For example, if the assembly was not locked and blocked physically by the administration led by the speaker and the Congress legislators, the things would have been settled down there itself. Or subsequently, if they have not seized the Raj Bhavan, then the animals, very precious animal Mithun, which is very much like a cow, but very precious one and very respected in Arunachal Pradesh. The Congress ministers, MLAs and the leaders, they slaughtered that cow like Mithun, which is very precious animal near the gate of Raj Bhavan and blocking the roads to the Raj Bhavan. If this were known by the people like you, senior journalists and the national mainstream media, then you would have yourself called for a president rule at that time. But central government choose not to act in haste. There are many instances. And for example, even in the constitutional point, when Chief Minister had obtained 17 MLA's signature, saying that if they don't support the Chief Minister, they will tender resignation in the Assembly. So this kind of intimidation and other kind of unhealthy method, and which led to Speaker disqualifying 2 Assembly members, which they defied. They said, we have not, just listen to me first. When Speaker disqualified 2 MLAs, then BJP MLAs, including 2 independent MLAs, they asked for the removal of the Speaker, so they gave a letter to the Raj Bhavan. So the governor followed the rules of 14 days mandatory period to act on that. That was the reason that the assembly session was preponed, to ensure that the disqualification or the no confidence motion against the speaker can be moved. Now when this was moved, the assembly was locked, thereby assembly had to be held in the makeshift arrangement with due permission from the governor. Anyway, these all things were not reported widely in the national channel. My point is, the problem which is being faced by Arunachal Pradesh is not BJP's creation, not central government's creation. It is the creation of the Congress party. We have not advised the Chief Minister to drop his senior ministers and parliamentary secretaries at one go.
Okay, I'm going to get the Congress. I'm going to get the Congress to respond to that. But Mr. Rijiju, one last question before you leave us. I just wanted to get, having said that, because Article 356 has been invoked in this case, you may well have the possibility of a united opposition coming forward and taking you on all this, because over the period of time, the imposition of President's rule is something that has tended to get, it's not something that is by and large welcomed. It's been misused so often in the past that the minute you're talking about the imposition of President's rule somewhere, it's not something that people are by and large very comfortable with, unless, I mean, of course, there will be times in it, there's no choice but to do it. So are you fearing that? Are you seeing that as a possibility?
Vikram, on the contrary, BJP is the most vocal party in terms of rejection of the Article 356 misuse. Here also, I am saying, suppose if central government had not intervened, if there was a more bloodshed and if there was more chaos, won't BJP government, central government will be accused that an important strategic state in Arunachal Pradesh has broken down in terms of constitutional machinery, and then central government chooses to turn away? How can central government look away when a very important state is in turmoil? So I would rather put it in the other way.
Sir, you're Minister of State also, of course, for Home Affairs. So I just wanted to get your analysis now on the implications of everything that's happened from the point of view of internal security and, external security for that matter in Arunachal Pradesh. How do you think the people are going to react to that, and what do you think is going to happen going forward?
President rule is not the option. It is a temporary mechanism, just a stopgap arrangement. But once governor report is made public, now governor's report is secret, and we are going to submit it to the Home Ministry and whatever, if the Supreme Court asks, whatever, I can't comment on whatever is happening in the court because there's a constitutional bench hearing on this matter. But once the governor's report is made public or in the domain of the Supreme Court, then everything will become clear. Then those who don't know and criticizing the central government's decision will admit that if central government had not intervened, then there would be a serious consequences. There was no option left but for the central government to recommend for the president rule, which Rashtrapati ji had duly consented after applying his wisdom.
Okay. Of course, the matter is now going before the Supreme Court, so we'll have to see what the Supreme Court is going to say on this on Monday.
Yes, the Supreme Court is hearing this matter, so that is why I am not going into the details of the reports of the governor and all other subjects, related to that. Okay. But I am just telling once again that this unfortunate incident is not creation of BJP or central government. It is creation of the Congress party, and they should have remained united. They are not kids. The Congress MLAs and ministers are not kids. So their infighting has put Arunachal into trouble. So Congress should apologize to the people of Arunachal Pradesh.
All right, Mr. Rijiju, thank you so much, sir, for joining us. The Minister of State for Home Affairs. Now I'm going to get everyone else in, but he had a lot to say about the Congress party, so I'm going to give you the right to reply.
So I'm just going to take a few minutes. The minister saying that the Bharatiya Janata Party is not involved is the height of doublespeak. In the Guwahati High Court, all the top leadership comes. It's common conversation in Delhi that all these MLAs were parked in Delhi in the hotels. I would expect at least a senior person not to be so blatant about it. The other part is these guys go and change the governor. The previous governor, they send a new governor. Vikram, one sec. All these
the
actions
governor who was chief secretary appointed by their government in Assam.
What I'm trying to say, listen, what I'm saying is they change the governor. All these actions happen after the governor gets changed. And he says a Mitun was sacrificed. Now that means anytime you want a president's rule, you'll do an animal slaughter in front of the governor's house and
you
get
just
a
close
the
clause and article of the constitution under which after 6 months
first question.
Government can continue.
Again,
Just quote the clause.
Bharatiya Janata Party's
6 months is the maximum permissible limit under the constitution.
The Prime Minister says
why did the Chief Minister lock the assembly and not allow a vote of confidence?
And even he said that no MLAs can enter assembly. Can you imagine in parliament MPs cannot enter?
Bharatiya Janata Party se main anurod karta hu 2 minutes shant rahiye when you are speaking. No, I just want to finish it off with one thing. The way the governor preponing the meeting was wrong. One. Then the Supreme Court was hearing it from the 15th of Jan. They knew it. But the governor doesn't make a statement to the Supreme Court saying he's recommended the president's rule. This is the limit of doublespeak of this government. And the last and most important, he's talking about animal sacrifice. Anytime you want a president's rule, will you go and sacrifice animals?
Said that all. Okay, Mohan, you heard what the minister said. Coming from there, he said there was no choice for the central government but to have president's rule. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that. Before I get on to the subject, I was there a few months ago and I stayed at the Raj Bhavan and I took part in a conference at the Northeastern University in Itanagar. And I spoke to the scholars, I spoke to the postgraduate students, and you could sense a sense of disquiet, unhappiness with how the system is running, how the government is functioning, how they view India, how they view China, and there are lots of issues brewing out there. We have given them bad government over the years. If you go to Itanagar, it's shocking. There's no infrastructure, the roads are bad, telecommunication is bad, everything is bad.
So does the imposition of president's rule make situations worse? In Kashmir, for example, there are times when the imposition of president's rule exacerbated a lot of the problems out there.
Yeah, here I don't think, you see what has happened is that both the parties have been derelict and playing horse trading. You see, we've had this, not the first time there's defection in Arunachal Pradesh. Every time there's a change in government in Delhi, there's a change of government in the state. And they've encouraged it. Here, clearly there was a horse trading going on. And the Chief Minister and the Governor were overreaching each other. Now this is, you can say, give it a veneer of constitutional business and all, but lack of propriety, lack of morality out here is clearly on evidence here. And this is a state which is being claimed by China. They show it on all their maps as Lower Tibet, and they have extended their claim from Tawang originally to the whole of Arunachal Pradesh now. They show everything, including Terap Changlang, in their maps now as their territory. And this is how we're managing this territory. It's a small state, 1.4 million people, and we can't look after it.
Shekar Gupta, let me get you in on that note. And I think what Mohan Guruswamy just said is one of the reasons why I think all of us give far less attention to the Northeast than we should, and to a really crucial, important state like Arunachal Pradesh. In a sense, it's shocking that it needs a crisis like this to really get Arunachal Pradesh into everyone's, attention span, in a sense. So given that, I guess there are two ways of looking at all that's happened. One, that there was so much happening, and we just heard Kiren Rijiju saying, therefore, there was no, because it's sensitive, we had no choice but to have president's rule. The other way is that this again makes the sense of misgovernance being felt more acutely by the people there.
Look, at this point, because 6 months assembly had not met, there is the perfect excuse for imposing president's rule. But what brought us to this pass? Yes, Congress was not able to keep its flock together, but were these defections spontaneous? I'm sorry to say this, but these were obviously orchestrated and organized by the BJP with the governor in cahoots with them. I just have a few principled questions to ask, or maybe just one question to begin with. Any government can appoint its own governors, but Arunachal Pradesh and Assam have a serious border dispute between themselves. How did the BJP appoint an Assamese civil servant? I'm not talking of his political loyalties. How can you appoint an Assamese civil servant as the governor of Arunachal Pradesh, with which his home state has a boundary dispute, when in Arunachal Pradesh, governor has special powers on law and order? I mean, if this is such a dhakad government that BJP has, and if they think they can run the Northeast the way they want to run it, then why don't they appoint an Assamese civil servant as the governor of Nagaland? Nagaland and Assam also have a boundary dispute. I dare them to appoint, that's a question we raised when they appointed an IPS officer as Vice Chancellor of Jamia Millia, and I had then said, I dare the UPA to appoint an IPS officer as Vice Chancellor of JNU. Nobody would dare to do it. Similarly, they would not dare to appoint Mr. Rajkhowa as the governor of Nagaland, but they've sent him to Arunachal, because Arunachal is seen as a weak state that they thought they could push around. This is really an uncalled for crisis.